It begins in the wrong kind of silence, the kind that isn't absence, but pressure. The sound a room makes just before it breaks. You don't hear it at first, you feel it. Behind the walls, behind the stars. Something's folding. Something that should have held, and didn't. NNTHE girl stands on the rooftop of a city that forgot it was built on fault lines. Her face tilted upward, but her breath is held inward. In her hand, a small, round mirror, like the kind you'd use to check your eye or catch the sun. But the mirror doesn't reflect her. It reflects stars that don't belong to this sky. It's not night. Not really. The atmosphere's too thin here. The sun somewhere behind a haze. But the stars burn clear, as if the distance collapsed. No twinkle, no veil, just raw, surgical brightness. Unprocessed. The kind of light that shouldn't have arrived. And yet, it has. NNTHE, James Webb Space Telescope, is 1.5 million kilometers from Earth. But tonight, it's closer than skin. It sent back images, not of what's out there, but of what shouldn't be. Galaxies too large, too luminous, too early. It's not that we saw something new, it's that we saw something impossible. NNTHE mirror in her hand begins to tremble, not from cold, but from disagreement. Like the air itself doesn't want to keep lying. Like reality is a house of equations, and a single window just broke. NNFOR decades. We believed the story of the universe like children believe constellations, as shapes we named into order. A big bang, expansion, structure. But the images don't fit the story anymore. They're too sharp, too wrong. The telescope didn't extend our vision. It fractured our certainty. NNSHE closes her eyes, and for a moment, the stars rearrange behind her lids. A galaxy older than its possibility. A light that left before its source could have existed. A distance that's collapsing faster than it should. These aren't metaphors, these are coordinates, and they don't belong on any known map. There's a term in physics, look-back time. The further you look, the older the light. In theory, James Webb lets us see the edge of time itself. But what if we didn't look back? What if we looked through the illusion of sequence? Through the fiction of origin, NNSHE opens her eyes again. The city hasn't changed, but the scale has. Every window is a possibility collapsing. Every shadow, a delay in understanding. Every silence, a tension unscreaming itself. NNWE thought we were peering into the past. Instead, we may have stepped outside of time, not to see where we came from, but to discover that we've never been where we thought. NNTHE mirror in her hand slips. Falls, cracks on the concrete. And for one frame, one breath, the crack in the glass aligns with the stars above, a fracture, a map, a warning. NNWE got the universe all wrong. NN the telescope just proved it. There's something specific about falling underwater. Not the splash, not the weight, but the moment just before. The split second when the world hasn't changed yet, but you know it will. That hush, that ache. That's where we are now, just before the plunge, with the fabric of the cosmos rippling and taut. NNWE used to think of the early universe as blankness, a long silence. Then heat. Then light. Then time. But James Webb didn't show silence. It showed structure. Already formed, already beautiful, already defiant. Galaxies like webs of impossible detail, born when space should have still been chaos. It's like walking into a cathedral and realizing it was never built. It was always just there. NNTHE girl is in a dark room now. Not asleep, just still. A tablet glows faintly in her lap, rendering one of Webb's images. She zooms in, then closer still. A spiral of stars older than any model would allow. The math collapses in her expression. Not fear, not even wonder, just displacement. The sensation that your coordinates have shifted, but no one told your body. Every time we look deeper into space, we expect to see crudeness. simplicity, primal formations. But instead, we see sophistication, as if something has skipped ahead, as if there was no first draft of the universe. Only final versions appearing in reverse. NNWE were told the first billion years after the Big Bang were dark. But now we find galaxies glowing fiercely in the fog, stars assembling faster than fusion allows, black holes too big too early. It's not just fast-forwarded, it's out of sequence. NNSHE rewinds the footage frame by frame, not of the stars, but of herself, recorded by accident as the telescope's images played. In each micro-expression, a timeline fractures: surprise, disbelief, grief, recalibration. It's not the universe she's watching fall apart. It's her understanding, her expectations, her role in cosmology. There's something called the timeline problem, the idea that certain structures appeared before the physics that should have allowed them. Webb confirmed it, not as anomaly, but as norm. And if that's true, we haven't just misunderstood timing, we've misunderstood cause itself. There's a sculpture in the museum she visits the next day, bronze, human-sized. A body emerging from marble, like it's being born from the stone's own will. She touches the edge, the moment where a surface becomes shape. That's what these galaxies feel like. Not constructed, not evolved, just there. As if the universe isn't unfolding, but remembering, and a thought occurs. What if space-time isn't a stage, but a symptom? What if the universe isn't progressing, but echoing? Repeating patterns it never actually lived, like déjà vu on a cosmic scale? In NTHAT night, she opens her window and stares into the sky not to find answers, but to ask the right question. If the structure came first, does that mean the story we tell of beginnings and ends is wrong? Not in fact, but in form? NNTHE idea that the universe is expanding isn't wrong. But maybe our assumption that it began as nothing is. Maybe it wasn't born. Maybe it always was, just beyond the veil of observation, until a lens sharp enough, still enough, finally pierced through, and NTHE stars outside blink in perfect silence. But behind them, there's a scream, not of pain, of recognition, something ancient finally being seen, not for what it was, but for what it always meant. NNSHE closes her eyes and breathes in, not air, orientation, trying to find which way is forward now, which way is truth. NNTHE universe is not older than we thought. It's other than we thought. And the telescope didn't show us more. It showed us wrong. She stands in a corridor of light, not metaphorically, literally. A data visualization lab, where every strand of color stretching from wall to wall represents one spectrum of light detected by James Webb. Each line corresponds to a star, a galaxy, a cluster, but also to a time, a distance, a breath that left something long before breath was possible. And as she moves through the corridor, the light begins to shift, not with her presence, but with her doubt. NNTHE redshift readings from Webb shattered calibration. Galaxies at redshift 13.2, which means they formed just 300 million years after the Big Bang. But that number isn't a fact. It's a betrayal, because those galaxies are too large, too organized, too old in structure to have emerged so fast. The numbers are real. The physics isn't in her hands. She holds a printout. Not data, but interpretation. A simulated model of early star formation. It looks like a storm. Particles clustering, collapsing, igniting. But now she knows. This isn't what happened. This is what we wanted to see. What we programmed into our expectations. Like reconstructing a melody from one note and assuming it was always the same tune. There's a unit of cosmic energy called a yottawatt. 1 yottawatt is 1 trillion times 1 trillion watts. In the early universe, some proto-galaxies released that much energy per second. That's 17 Niagaras worth of matter turned into light every second. Try to imagine that, not in numbers, but in heat, in pressure. In the scream of physics trying to catch up with its own fiction, NNSHE moves into another room. Projection domes. Surround sound. The entire sky as seen by Webb unfolds around her. She's inside a dome of error, a simulation trying to maintain composure, even as it bleeds at the edges. Galaxies bloom where no framework allows. It's not random, it's patterned. But the pattern doesn't come from theory, it comes from something else, something under the skin of logic. In astrophysics, models rely on something called lambda CDM, the standard model of cosmology. It's elegant, predictable, everything fits. But the new data doesn't just challenge lambda CDM, it humiliates it. The model can't explain the observations without deforming itself, like trying to stretch a skeleton to fit a body that's already growing out of it. NNTHE girl places her hand on the dome's glass. Behind the stars, faint filaments of dark matter thread across space like ancient veins. But even that scaffold, even the invisible bones of the cosmos, no longer explain enough. Something larger is missing, or too small to be seen. NNSHE thinks about symmetry, about how nature loves it. Snowflakes, shells, spiral arms of galaxies. But what if symmetry is not a product of order, but a memory of trauma? What if the universe arranged itself this way to heal from something we'll never witness? NNTHE metaphor shifts. The universe is not a machine. It's not a watch or a program. It's a scar, a record of damage written in gravitational strokes and thermodynamic whispers. Not intentional, but not meaningless either. NNTHE corridor darkens. Not from malfunction, but from understanding. She stands still now. The light doesn't shift, it pulses. Like breath. And in that breath, the question surfaces: NIF. The early universe had structure. Who structured it? NNNOT. Who as an identity, but intention. Is structure emergent from chaos? Or imposed through forgetting? Maybe the universe isn't built by laws. Maybe it's the residue of something that broke and never reassembled right. NSHE looks up. The dome plays a new animation. A star collapses into a black hole. And just before the screen goes dark, it emits a gravitational wave. That wave ripples, distorts the image, and passes through her NNNOT metaphor. A felt fact. Gravity is not just pull, it is memory. Webb didn't show us new galaxies, it showed us the moment before memory became time. There is a hallway in the observatory she returns to often. No lights, no signs, just walls of matte black that drink in every photon. It's the quietest place in the building, because it's built to reflect nothing. But tonight, walking through it, she feels something different. Not silence, not darkness, but pressure. As if the hallway itself were watching her pass, waiting for her to ask the question she's been avoiding. Nami lul, what if everything's already going differently? NNNOT will go. Not might go. But is already in motion. And we're the ones lagging behind. There's a principle in physics called retarded time. The idea that by the time light reaches us, the thing it came from is already changed. Or gone. We think we're seeing the universe, but we're only seeing what it used to be from our slow, delayed vantage point. Webb doesn't just look far, it looks back. And what it saw wasn't the dawn, it was a contradiction. Galaxies born before time allowed it. Stars fully formed before the recipe existed. Gravity asserting itself with too much precision, too soon, as if the rules had been applied after the outcome. Not SHE stops in the hallway. No doors, no turns. But the pressure is undeniable now. Like the air is thick with consequences. Something has shifted. Not in the telescope. In US.NNNN. Because if the model breaks, so does the idea that we're headed toward clarity. Maybe science isn't convergence. Maybe it's entanglement, each answer folding in more unanswerable threads. And this is the tangle that won't smooth out. NNTHE stars and Webb's deepest fields aren't faint whispers. They're screams frozen in symmetry, too clean, too distant, too now. It's like they knew we'd be looking, like the act of seeing them is part of their being seen. Quantum mechanics at scale, observation changing the observed. What if the telescope didn't show us reality, but but caused a collapse into a version of it that we could handle. Back at her apartment, she watches a shadow move across the wall. Not hers. A curtain catching breeze from a window she doesn't remember opening. The shadow shifts like a wave, like a thought re-entering the mind from beneath. It reminds her, the universe isn't a sequence of events. It's a field of conditions, and we live inside the ones that haven't collapsed yet. This isn't metaphysics. This is structural physics. The fabric of reality emerging not from particles, but from probabilities, coalescing under pressure. And pressure by nature is invisible, until something gives. An NSHE opens the latest Webb composite on her screen. The colors aren't real. They're wavelengths mapped to visible tones. Blues, reds, ochres. But the shapes are real. Spiral arms, dust lanes, lensed echoes, and all of them arranged too well. Not as chaos giving rise to order, but as if order came first and hid behind the appearance of chaos until we had the tools to find it. It's not a theory. It's a feeling. Like hearing music from a locked room, you don't know the instrument. But the structure tells you, this was intentional. NNSHE imagines, what if time is a garment the universe wears, but not what it needs? What if events are just the folds we read into it? And what if Webb, instead of piercing time, snagged it? Unraveling threads we can't reweave. And a message flashes on her screen. An update. A correction to a previous model. The parameters rewritten again. Redshift values adjusted. Interpretation repackaged. And she feels it. Not progress, not refinement, but drift. Like a compass losing north. Like gravity forgetting which way is down. NNSHE goes back to the hallway. This time, she doesn't walk. She waits, letting the black walls breathe, letting them whisper what she already knows. NN, we're not seeing the beginning. NN, we're seeing the moment the beginning became optional. She lies beneath a dome, a projection of stars curved above her like a ceiling too vast to hold, and for the first time she doesn't try to name anything. No constellations, no coordinates, just breath. The slow rise and fall of her chest under the simulated sky. It's not detachment, it's surrender. A kind of listening that doesn't involve ears. The kind that only happens when knowledge has nothing left to offer. NNTHE science says one thing. The body, another, NN, because the numbers scream. These galaxies shouldn't be there. The early universe was supposed to be a soup. Hydrogen, helium, randomness. But what Webb found was architecture. Balanced, spiraling, beautiful, and old enough to predate the laws we thought made beauty possible. NNSHE runs her hand along the curved floor, as if tracing the edge of something real. The floor is smooth, polished, cool, but beneath it the earth pulses. Subsonic, almost imperceptible. She feels it, not in her skin, but in the bones behind her eyes. The universe isn't static, it's vibrating. In quantum field theory, particles are not objects, they are excitations, fluctuations in fields. That means the building blocks of everything are not things, but tensions. And if that's true, then maybe what Webb revealed isn't more stuff. Maybe it revealed the pattern of the vibration itself, and it's wrong, or too perfect, and SHE sees it now. These galaxies, perfectly formed, are like fingerprints burned into wet cement. They're not anomalies, they're traces. The aftermath of a pressure that existed before the Big Bang was a bang. Maybe before it was anything at all. In biology, cells organize into bodies not because they want to, but because conditions press them into order. Pressure makes form. That's not metaphor, that's embryology. And if structure is a response to pressure, then maybe the universe structured itself not through time, but through memory of pain. An NTHE dome fades from stars to simulation. A wave of matter flowing across the screen. Cold gas. Then collapse. Then light. The cycle of birth. But what if this isn't birth? What if it's scar tissue? A recurrence. A coping mechanism. A reflex across billions of light years. UNSHE places her palm to the screen, feeling nothing. Yet her breath catches. Not from what she sees, but from what she feels herself becoming inside it. This part of the script has no narration. Just data. Just silence. Just the motion of starlight becoming shape. The voice in her head has stopped explaining. It's watching. The way you watch fire, knowing you won't touch it, but needing to be close. NNSHE reads a line from a paper. Galactic morphology inconsistent with lambda CDM parameters at high redshift. It's a technical way of saying, these galaxies aren't just unexpected. They are impossible, unless the framework we use to define possibility is wrong. Not miscalculated, misaligned, like using a ruler meant for dreams to measure bone. NNSHE stands now, alone in the projection room. The air hums with old algorithms and updated errors. But she's not trying to fix it. She's learning to inhabit it. The discomfort. The displacement. The lack in because this is the frontier. Not the edge of observation, but the moment when you stop needing the story to make sense. When you stop forcing the universe to explain itself in your language. And instead, you listen to its own. NNSHE closes her eyes, and the light on the walls becomes warmth on her face. Not sun, not starlight, just warmth. From data, from noise, from the inhuman frequency of truth. There's a difference between knowing and understanding. We've known for decades that light takes time to reach us. But now we understand, emotionally, bodily, what it means to see something that no longer exists. What it means to trust a glow that left its source before time began. NNTHE girl walks out of the dome. Her steps echo faintly, not against walls, but against the assumptions she no longer carries. She doesn't need to rewrite the equations. She just needs to stay open long enough to see what they fail to contain. NNTHE universe isn't revealing itself. It's letting go of what it never needed to hide. Outside the observatory, the sky is velvet. Not dark, not empty, just unlit. As if something once luminous chose to dim itself for a reason we're not supposed to grasp. She walks barefoot across the concrete. No urgency, no plan, her body calibrated to a rhythm that doesn't belong to this place. She pauses beneath a street lamp. It flickers, then holds. The stars above don't. They shimmer in stillness. And she wonders if shimmer is just our failure to perceive. NNHER phone vibrates, not with a message, but with an alert. A new data drop. More web findings, more galaxies where there should be none. The screen shows clusters that look like eyes, or lungs, or something in between. Too symmetrical, too alive. For a moment, she forgets she's looking at space. It feels like she's looking inward, into something soft and pulsing that doesn't know it's being watched. There's a theory now, whispered, unofficial, liminal, that the light we see from the earliest structures isn't from them at all, but from gravitational lensing illusions, warped not just by matter, but by the shape of time itself. That what we're seeing might not be distant, but reflected. Light bouncing through folds. Back at us, from somewhere else. Maybe someone else. NNSHE opens the front camera of her phone. Looks into it. Just eyes. Face. Skin. But now, even that feels less fixed. Less certain. She blinks, and thinks of photons leaving her retina, streaming outward, joining the soft chorus of radiant residue this planet has been sending into space for millennia. Her body is not hers. It's a radiating archive. NNWE forget that we're also telescopes, machines of perception, living sensors, collecting, collapsing, reframing. She touches the skin below her eye, not out of vanity, but calibration. She feels the warmth of blood, of distance, of here. And she tries to imagine, what if perception isn't passive? What if it's participation? There's a small device on her desk, a radiometer, 4 vanes in a glass bulb. When light hits it, they spin. Not because of heat, but because photons exert pressure. Light, by simply existing, applies force. That's not metaphor. That's measurable, real. And yet, we still treat observation as neutrality, as if watching didn't change the thing watched. NNSHE closes the blinds, not to block the stars, but to keep them from looking in. For the first time, she feels the weight of being an observer. Not privilege, not power. Responsibility. Because maybe every time we look up, we're not just retrieving history, maybe we're shaping it, finalizing it, collapsing the field into form. There's an image from Webb, the pillars of creation, redone in higher clarity. Columns of gas, dust, entropy, and fire stretching light years across. They look like hands reaching up from some deep, cosmic ground. But here's the paradox. They're already gone. The light we see left over 6,500 years ago. Since then, they've been destroyed by supernova. We're looking at ghosts, at echoes, at the illusion of presence. And yet, we weep, we stare, we feel something. That ache isn't just for the beauty, it's for the dislocation. The knowledge that our feelings attach to something that no longer exists. Or worse, never existed the way we saw it. NNSHE walks past her bookshelf, trailing a finger along the spines. Titles she once read to understand the cosmos. Now they feel like fiction, not because they're wrong, but because they're too tidy. Reality doesn't fit on pages. It leaks. NNSHE pauses on one title. The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. She smiles without irony. Maybe this isn't a revolution. Maybe it's an undoing. Not a leap forward, but a gentle collapse of certainty. And back at her desk, she opens a map of the early universe, temperature fluctuations and the cosmic microwave background. Blues and reds, blotches of primordial imbalance. It's beautiful, but it's not truth. It's interpretation, translation. And she wonders, what if the real data isn't out there? What if it's already here, in our pulses, our errors, our questions we were never trained to ask? NNSHE looks at her reflection in the laptop screen. It's faint, warped by fingerprints and dust. But it's enough. For one moment, she sees herself not as a person studying the universe, but as a symptom of it. A brief, aware ripple on the skin of something older, wider, deeper than comprehension. NNTHE light from the screen shifts. Not in brightness, in tone. Something in the background calibration adjusts, and for a heartbeat, she feels it. NNNOT knowledge, NNNOT awe, NNBUT connection. There's a photo in the archives, easy to miss. A calibration shot from Webb, not intended for release, not a galaxy, not a nebula, just background. A mistake. But if you look closely, really look, there's something there. Not an object, not a signal, just a faint asymmetry, a distortion in the noise, like the moment before a whisper begins. NNSHE downloads it, puts it on her wall. No explanation, no caption. Just the feeling that this unnoticed frame is closer to the truth than all the spectacular images that came before. Because the spectacular deceives, it dazzles. But this unsettles. NTHE final question doesn't arrive as a sentence. It arrives as weight, the kind that builds behind the ribs when something is ending, or beginning, or both. She lies on the floor, no projection, no data, just the ceiling, and the breath that hasn't left her yet. What if we got the universe all wrong? What if the map we've drawn across time was just a reflection, not of space, but of how we needed space to be? What if the laws aren't discovered, but negotiated between perception and silence? What if light isn't a message, but a mirror, bending not just around gravity, but around consciousness? NWE built the telescope to look back. But maybe that was never possible. Maybe there's no such thing as back. Maybe time is not a line. Maybe it's a knot, and we've just pulled too hard. NNSHE thinks of every assumption she's carried, like scaffolding. Mass, redshift, expansion, background radiation, constants. And one by one, they fade. Not disappear, just dissolve into something wider. Not chaos, but the kind of order that no longer requires explanation. There's a woman in the dark now, not watching, not seeking, just present. The same way a forest is present, or gravity. She places her hand flat on the floor, and for a moment it feels like the earth is breathing back. Slow, tectonic, and patient.nnthe final image Webb sends is not of stars. It's of absence. A region so empty, so void of light, it was considered meaningless. But when processed, there's motion, patterns, a ripple through the silence that shouldn't be there, a signature of something that doesn't want to be named. And she understands, in that moment, what we've actually done. NNWE didn't see too far. NNWE looked too long. NNWE stayed with the question past the point of comfort, past the beauty, past the story. We let the light hurt. We let the symmetry crack. And in that pain, something opened. An N-N-O-T, the universe. N-N-U's, N-N. Because the real shift isn't out there. It's in here, behind the eyes, beneath the chest. In the way we now walk through doorways, knowing that walls are statistical agreements. In the way we now love, knowing that everything we see may already be gone. In the way we ask now, not expecting answers, but contact. What if the universe was never wrong? What if it was just never ours to measure? What if the light that made us has been waiting not to be seen, but to be felt once without demand? And NSHE exhales, and the image fades. There is no conclusion, and only the pressure of knowing and the softness of letting go.